There have been mummies that have been much more preserved. In fact, their internal organs were preserved. You understand the dilemma here, that if we say that this was preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all, the process was done by other than Allah. Secondly, it wasn't the best way to preserve it. Assalamu alaikum. Now, what I'm going to share in this video presentation, for some people, it may shock them. It will challenge what they believe, because there is an idea that's been widespread that this mummy is a miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is based on an ayah in Surah Yunus, where Allah says, فَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ بِبَدَنِكَ لِتَكُونَ لِمَنْ خَلْفَكَ آيَةً. Commonly translated as, so today we will save your body that you may be to those who succeed you a sign. So what they say is that this is the sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This mummy, this is a mummy of Ramses II, who was the alleged pharaoh, as many say, that drowned, and his body was saved, and then it was mummified. So we have, for example, and this is a video that has an opinion because they understand that this pharaoh was not preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And so just quickly, briefly, I will just play the clip that mentions something about this saving of his body.
God announced to Pharaoh that your body will be preserved, and it will be preserved for posterity to see and take lessons from it. I mean, this is what we understand, right? Yeah. Now, this is a reference to mummification of Egyptian kings. And this process, or this idea, this phenomenon called mummification, was unknown to the Arabs. There are no historic references I am aware of.
Okay, so we heard that. What's interesting is actually, when this video was made about 3 years ago, I actually commented and asked 3 questions to Adnan Rashid, although he did not respond. Now, I'm not saying that he read it and didn't respond to me, but it wasn't responded to. The questions I asked were very important, and they were, since this was a common practice with Egyptians, and we have many mummies that were preserved in that way, why was only this pharaoh mentioned in the context of mummification? Secondly, which is even more important, and I'm sure people have actually thought of this, Allah says, فَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ, that we will save you. There's a divine plural here. It's talking about Allah's power, His majesty. When He talks about processes that only Allah can do, like giving life, إِنَّ نَحْنُ نُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى, that we give life to the dead. نُحْيِي وَنُمِيتُ, we give life and we give death. Over here, فَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ, we will save you. Now, what I would expect, if Allah is saying this, and it's talking about His body, that He will save His body, I would expect Him to have drowned, His body to remain in the sea, and to be preserved until this day, and for somebody to discover it as a miracle. That's what I would expect. I wouldn't expect Him to wash up to the shore, the Egyptians to take Him, and then to mummify Him. Because what we see with the mummy is that most of the inside is not there anymore. That's part of the mummification process. Organs were taken out, and the Egyptians mummified the corpse. Now, one thing that you probably are not aware of, there is absolutely no evidence that this mummy drowned. One could say, well, there's traces of salt in the body, but all mummies have traces of salt. It's part of the mummification process. And what we know of this mummy is the following facts. These are facts, by the way. They're not disputed. A very important point is that the mummy was somebody of a very old age. They say up to 90 years of age. and that Ramses II had very severe arthritis.
Oh, my bones. Thank you, young one.
And that makes us ask a question. If he was this old, how could he have chased after Musa Islam and Bani Israel? Back in those days, traveling on horses or oxen, it was very challenging. What's bizarre, I find, is that these people that say that this is a miracle, most of them I speak to don't even know what the classical Mufassirun have said about this. It's always good to know what they said and how they understood it. Now, obviously, we can get new interpretations and new insights, but are these new insights representative of the facts, of the language of the Quran? That's what we're trying to find out, inshallah. So Allah says, فَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ بِبَدَنِكَ. This word badan has been interpreted in another way. They say it refers to the body armor the Pharaoh wore. It was a distinct body armor that people knew him by. His body washed up to the shore with that body armor. So they knew, Bani Israel, and those that saw it knew that he had died. Because for them, he was like a godlike figure that doesn't die. The indoctrination that they had and the subjugation that they had to bear, it affected them psychologically. So to prove that he had died, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is actually mentioned in the tafasir, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him wash up to the shore. Bani Israel then saw that he had died. So that's an opinion in classical tafasir. That would be actually more consistent with the plural of majesty, that Allah made him drown and wash up to the shore, and that it was a sign for them and those who came after. Notice what it says about the sign. It says, litakuna, that you, so this is speaking about Fir'aun, liman khalfaka ayatan. And notice there's more emphasis here on liman khalfaka than ayah. If it was speaking more about the ayah, you expect it to say litakuna ayatan liman khalfaka. There's a difference actually. But here there's more emphasis on liman khalfaka. It doesn't say that his badan will be a sign, but rather he will be a sign. And the sign is his life and legacy. That Prophet came to him and gave him multiple signs, yet he rejected them. And that fits perfectly with the last part of the surah. For many people, to our signs, they are completely heedless. So it doesn't matter how many signs you give them. If you look at the life of Fir'aun, how many signs was he given? So many. But he continued on in his transgression. And Allah says that most people are like that. So may Allah make us of the few who are not heedless. Now, in the next lesson, I'll be speaking about the Pharaoh at the time of Musa alayhi salam, and whether the whole story is centered around one Pharaoh or a number of different Pharaohs. I personally believe it's the second. That actually, not the whole story is the same Pharaoh. We'll explore that later on, inshallah, in the next lesson. And wa sallallahu sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.